5 key components to the 3D Learner Assessment process. First, the structure of Intellect assessment that I'll discuss in more detail in this video. Second, the interactive metronome that looks at attention and self-control. Third, the physograph that looks at how a child tracks when reading. Fourth, biofeedback that looks at anxiety and how well the child handles stress. And last, the Taylor Reading Plus assessment that looks at the student's reading speed and comprehension and vocabulary level. The cornerstone of our assessment is the SOI, the Structure of Intellect Assessment, first developed in 1943 by Dr. J.P. Guilford. The Army had called Dr. Guilford and said, we got a problem. 43% of our kids are failing the pilot's program. He said, what are you using to assess them? They said, intelligence and good vision. He said, what makes you think that makes a good pilot? And they said, we're the U.S. Army. That's why you're here, Dr. Guilford. Dr. Guilford developed what's become the Structure of Intellect, or SOI assessment, and the failure rate went from 43% down to 8%. He came out of the war and said, I could do the same thing for students. The SOI assessment that now exists has 2 different versions. One for students in grades 1 through 3, which has 11 different components, and one for students in grades 4 and above that has 26 different subskills tested. The great thing about the assessment is that it tells us how a child learns best, where they're strong and where they're weak, and whether or not they have a vision or auditory issue. There are a couple of things that are really helpful. One is the learning style. As shown in this chart, this student has a figural learning style. That means they're strong when they're taught in a way that's hands-on. And they're weak in symbolic, which is phonics. Very often, evaluations come back and say a child needs a phonics-based program when in fact they're a figural or hands-on learner. The second component that's really interesting and happens in almost all of our students is they're strong in creativity and weak in evaluation, which means they can find incredible ways to solve problems, but they make bad decisions. Lastly, the assessment often shows a profile where the kid's very smart, has a lot of skills at college level, like this student, but has some real weaknesses, usually in visual memory, auditory memory, and how do they handle the small words. The great thing about the Structure of Intellect assessment, it allows us to tailor a program to meet your child's needs and gives us greater insight into other issues to look at.